Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by the fantastic Uli Latukefu, who's currently starring in the NBC series Young Rock. And I actually wanted to ask you about your auditions because you started out auditioning and self-taping in Australia before flying over to the States when you did some chemistry tests. And so I was interested in who it was from the rest of the cast that you started doing those initial chemistry reads with and what those scenes were like and starting to bounce off of each other at that point.
Funny story was I was actually late to my chemistry read because if you've been to the studios, they're massive. And it was my first time to the studio. So I had no idea firstly how to get in. And then, so I got to the callback and I was out of breath and Joseph Anderson was in the room, who plays Rocky Johnson. And I was still trying to catch my breath. And he asked me, do you want any help, getting ready? And I was like, no, I'm good. Thank you very much. And so we did it. I did the chemistry read with him. And later on, he said to me, I thought you thought, that, I was just somebody off the street, like trying to, some reader that you blew me off. I said, no, I was literally out of breath. I was trying to catch my breath to ready myself for the audition. But so I did my chemistry read with Joe, and it was for most of these things, it's really just trying to feel out how comfortable you are and how obviously how you work together, and it was cool off the bat. It was it was a lot of fun.
And one of the things that the show does in a really impressive way is there's such linearity between all of your performances. And particularly when you look at you and Bradley Constant, because you're playing Dwayne Johnson at such close ages to each other. But obviously you're not filming scenes together. So how do Ninach Kikan, who's the showrunner, and the rest of the directors really help and work to make sure there's that cohesiveness between your performances?
I don't know how she does it. She's such a talent, honestly. Not only just putting the whole piece together, but on set, she's an incredible director. But I think probably the casting really was an important part of having that continuity. I think Bradley and I share a lot of similarities personally in our own personal lives. So in terms of performance, I really think it's probably Natcha's idea to remain as true as you are as a human being, and bring what you naturally would choose to bring to play Dwayne. So I don't think it was too much of a stretch for either of us or for Natch, but really just kind of playing the truth of the character and playing the truth of the scenes and having fun.
And there's an interesting challenge too, because you're playing someone that everybody knows, but the majority of footage and archival material that's out there about him isn't from the point at which you're playing him. So I was really curious about your research process and looking at archival material and archival interviews with him, and then thinking about who he would have been a few years before that and how that all fit into your character development.
Yeah, that's a good point. There isn't much at all. If at now, there's only just football footage, so of him running on the field, which is not extremely helpful when you try to play the scenes for the show. But I mean, the first thing was we got to have a conversation with Dwayne straight away, which was amazing. I got to shoot questions. I had half my brain trying to focus on questions that I needed to prepare, and then half my brain was, fanning out on meeting just this icon. So that was super helpful. And then for me, it was kind of finding the balance. The earliest footage that I found was before he became a huge wrestling star. He was doing a few circuits around the country, around the US. And there's a few snippets of there. And for me, really, there wasn't really much I could go off other than my conversation with Dwayne, and just trying to remain true to somebody who we know at the current time to be just open-hearted, super ambitious, and just wants to make something of himself. And I think that's probably a common through line from when he was a young boy. So keeping that consistency was pretty much the key for me to unlock.
I imagine as well that there was a really big internal process in having to play him at age 18, because, not to call out any ages, but you're not 18 yourself, and they cast both you and Bradley Constant above the age so that they could have the physical stature of what he was at those ages. And so what was that journey in really thinking about, you know, some of the places where maybe he'd be a little bit naive, and because it is such a transformative age where he's really trying to figure out who he's going to become as a person as well?
Yeah, I don't think maybe myself personally I'm too far off that either. You know, I think we all are, if we are completely honest, are constantly kind of like in a place of trying to figure things out. You know, even now at this age. So for me, stepping back into college to college, Dwayne wasn't too much of a stretch. You know, a lot of us kind of, I do personally anyway, wake up, you know, nearly every day just trying to do something, you know, trying to do something well, trying to be the best version of myself that I can be, and chase a bigger dream, I guess, you know, and that's probably something that's common among all of us. So, but stepping back then, I think in particular for Dwayne at that point in time, he had seen a lot in terms of his parents going through financial hardship and relational hardship. And that's probably something that I tried to tap into in terms of why he is so driven and who he does the things that he does for. So, you know, that's a very important part of the show as well as for Dwayne.
And also one of the characteristics and traits that we see in him now is he has this real charisma, this real energy, this real warmth and openness that you can kind of really sense in the way that he talks to people. But you capture it so well in getting the genesis of that, where he just doesn't quite have the confidence or know how to execute it, even though the inklings of it are there, and play that into a lot of the comedic beats a lot, such as when he shows up at a party and he's not quite sure how to move his body yet because he's still figuring out how he fits into it. So how did you really kind of strip away the essence of that charisma and that energy into that slightly more uncertain phase for him?
You know, one of the things that's a good point, and thank you for that. One of the things that I really admire about Dwayne is he is completely, even to this day, he's completely himself. And whether he looks goofy to other people or whether he, you know, however he's perceived by people, he is just that. And I think, you know, I call it naive at that age, while I was playing him at college or not, he just goes in with an incredible level of optimism into any situation and backs himself. And I think that's a really admirable quality to have. So when I went into this, you know, party scene and I'm wearing the turtleneck and I, you know, bust out these moves that Dwayne found hilarious. Yeah, it was kind of just like, hey, let me show you what I got. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe that wasn't the right, but never being shy to give things a go. And I think that's probably the key for me. It was like, if you're wrong, you're wrong, but just give it a shot.
Yeah. And obviously a scene like that one where you've got the infamous turtleneck fanny pack chain combo that he wore, and we all know that photograph, has a lot of context to it for the audience already. But what are the ways in which costumes like that and a lot of the other pieces that you wear throughout the show, like how do those really help you in terms of adding character detail and just understanding him at a deeper level every time you step into one of those outfits?
You know, I think it's a combination of stepping into the costume and then stepping on set where everybody else is in the same world. I know of a lot of actors who feel that transformation when they step into the boots or step into a certain piece of clothing. And that probably happens for me earlier, personally speaking, when I'm trying on a costume and it doesn't really ring true to me or just doesn't feel right. But in terms of pre-shooting, it's not until I step on set and I go, oh, I can feel we're in this now, and this is here. And then I look at parts of the set, and then I can touch props, and I can, feel it with my bare hands. And so, but with our show, because there's such a jump to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, it's super nostalgic. And so part of me is like going, oh, remember we used to, oh, that was this. And the other part of me is trying to remain professional. And I loved, I grew up in the 90s and loved the fashion, loved the music. So yeah, I was part geeking out and part really just enjoying the experience.
And with your process in general, you studied and graduated from NIDA in Australia and primarily trained in theatre. So how does that really impact the way that you take the scripts and create character and scene breakdowns when you're first working with them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any other way, really. I auditioned for NIDA completely green. I had no idea. I'd done a handful of things. And so breaking down the script was really something that I had to learn and understand from, especially through theatre, breaking down scenes and breaking down the character and looking for things, looking for clues to make the character mine or make it more interesting, or finding. I often find that, like, if I can find a conversation about the character when the character's not in the room, I often find that pretty interesting and informative about how I'll choose to play the character. But really, I mean, the writing in this is so great, and the format of the show is obviously TV sitcom, so there's not a huge amount of exploration that you can do. But it's so much fun.
And because you were mentioning just there, obviously it is a sitcom, but through one of the recent episodes that we just got the opportunity to see, you were dealing with that moment where Dwayne suffered an injury early on the football team after leaving home for the first time. And the fact that led to a period of depression at a point when there wasn't necessarily the vernacular and the conversations to understand what that was. And I thought that you in the show like addressed that in a really, really beautiful way in capturing the realism of it. And so how did you all figure out what the tone of that was going to be? Because it's obviously heavier subject material, but at the same time, you're doing it in the middle of what is a sitcom and what is a comedy piece. So how did you all navigate and find the balance of those different tones for those specific scenes?
Yeah, good question. I mean, in that episode in particular, there's so much happening. He goes from top of the world to bottom of the world really quickly. Tonally, I think I just really left that up to Jeff Walker, our director, and Jeff Chang, who's our showrunner and producer, who was there every step of the way shooting. And for me personally was just to remain true to what was happening to me at the time. I know it's not an incredibly exciting answer, but really, I mean, I all I can do really is offer my choices and hope that it fits in the broader scheme of things. So tonally, I don't really have any control over that, other than the bosses get to do that and are very gracious in guiding me to making it work.
And you were bringing up his relationship with his parents earlier, which is such a crux of the show and really shows us how he became exactly who he is, the personality traits that he inhabited from both of them. And, his mom's kind of the one to be the realist about everything and to call things as they are. And then his dad's the one that has kind of like the fantastical element, but also that creates a certain sense of ambition in everybody around him at the same time. And so as you were playing him and as you continue throughout the series, how are you looking more and more to the relationship and the dynamic with both of his parents and how that influences who he's becoming? And again, just which traits he's starting to inhabit more from each of them?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And something that I have noticed more and more about Dwayne is just how much credit he gives to people around him who have contributed a large amount to his success. So for me, his family is obviously at the core of that, but he's also mentioned how him and his father had a challenging relationship. You know, his father was really, you know, a pioneer himself and had to kind of navigate through things himself. And so he was incredibly hard on Dwayne. But for me personally, I think I'd like to see just more of exploring his relationship with his parents in the way that audiences probably haven't seen yet. You know, the real kind of nitty gritty that you know, that we all have, frankly. You know, that isn't always brought to light, but just kind of getting to the real tough stuff that I think Dwayne has never shied away from. He's always kind of transparent about those things, but, you know, I think in the show, if we can get to those kind of things, they're all character building moments and relationships. So I'd like to see some of that.
And beyond his parents as well, there's also the fact that he had all of the other wrestlers that were a huge part of his life. And it almost feels like they're extra uncle figures and part of an extended family to him. You know, they know when he messes up and when he's done something wrong, they're there to give him advice on things as well. And so how did you really think about the way that impacted him as well, and how that dynamic would have influenced him and his family?
Yeah, I think they're very straight up. They're very honest, and they're very, you know, they tell it how it is from a place of love and care. And I think that's something that's kind of kept him level-headed and throughout his success, being able to go, okay, I've had people pull me up and show me the ropes several times. And they're from men who physically you wouldn't want to go up against, you know, guys who are much bigger, much stronger. So when you're surrounded by that energy, you tend to kind of fall in line pretty quickly. From speaking from personal experience myself. So I think, but as I said, it all comes from a place of love. So I think when you have that environment, it's incredibly encouraging when you know people like that have your back and are only out there for your benefit.
Yeah, nobody wants to fight Andre the Giant as a teenager.
No, and Matt Willig, who plays Andre the Giant, I'm 6'6", and he is like head above me, and he is very strong, very, very strong.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about the psychological aspect that it takes to reach that level of success and the amount of dedication that you have to pursue a lot of those ambitions, you know, particularly when you look at The Rock and the number of spaces within industries that he's been successful and been at the top of his game, you know, whether it's wrestling, whether it's acting, you know, now creating shows. It's like everything he does is top level. And that takes a real mindset in order to have that level of dedication to follow through on the ambition. So how did you want to build that into him and really understand that aspect of who he is?
Like I think I mentioned earlier, part of that I think comes down to his willingness to fail and willingness to kind of give something a good shot. And whether it comes off as incredibly successful or whether it doesn't. And, you know, not every project, if we look back in the last 15, 20 years, he would consider successful, you know, but he gave it a shot. And that's why he is here as one of the biggest icons and blockbuster draw cards you could ever hope for. And I think for me, it's that willingness coupled with a mindset to understand how to shift, when to shift, and what decisions to make, and a willingness to be open to new things. He talks about it sometimes about, you know, you can't do this alone. You have to be surrounded by a team who know more than you and who are better at what they do than you are. And I think that's that takes incredible humility. And that is definitely a quality that I think he possesses and is a reason why he's so successful.
And you're also playing him right now in the show at a point when he was starting to pursue a professional NFL career, and you yourself played competitive rugby. So did you find that you were able to pull on a lot of your own experience for a lot of those scenes? Even though it's a different sport, it requires a lot of the same characteristics and traits of you.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had a very similar situation happen to me. I was playing, I just graduated high school and went on to play club rugby union, went on a tour to New Zealand and dislocated my shoulder, broke my shoulder socket. And I couldn't afford surgery, so I had to give up. But I came from a very similar place where if you made it in football, at least that was a way of, you know, providing for family or putting some food on the table. So when that stops, you're at square one and you don't really know what to do. So a lot of that energy, a lot of that physicality was something that kind of came naturally when it came to playing that part of Dwayne's life at college.
And with the physicality of playing him at that point as well, you know, I know that there was a training regimen and a lot of it was nutrition based for you. And so I actually wanted to ask you about how you landed on the specifics of how you wanted to train your body for this role, particularly thinking about what does being a professional NFL player require of you? You know, what are the muscles that actually he would have been working and utilizing, and what would his stature and structure have been because of that specific sport? And then how you wanted to approach trying to mirror that for your performance.
Yeah, for me, it was really key to, you know, aesthetics is you know, important for film and TV, but for me, it was really kind of just being able to have the weight physically, more so than the aesthetics. You know, at that point, Dwayne was a defensive tackle in college, and so really that's a big task to go off after guys. You know, he just had such a huge frame at that time, and I wanted to make sure I had that weight and the gravitas physically for the performance. And it was a lot. I ate about 4,000 calories a day and trained close to 5 days a week, 6 days, you know, and taking some rest. But yeah, I think that often helps me, is if I can get my body to change, and, you know, your breathing changes, you know, all those kind of things really can take its effect and really help me. It really did.
And in playing him throughout the series, what have you found to be the biggest challenges in taking on this character and the biggest places where it's pushed you really far outside of your comfort zone?
I think the challenging part for me personally has been these conversations with Rocky, because you know that's such a fresh, him passing is such a fresh thing to happen for Dwayne. And so part of me is feeling like I wish these conversations I think it's just a different energy when you know the person's passed away. I don't really know how to explain that properly, but yeah, I'm sorry. I can't phrase exactly how I feel about it, but it's really kind of, you know,
brings a different type of energy into the room when you're filming those sorts of scenes, I imagine.
Yeah, it really does. I think just because it's so new, you know, it's a strange thing, and I don't know if I've ever felt it at all, is you can almost feel his spirit in the room when we're shooting the scenes. And again, I've never experienced that. And maybe it's a father and son, you know, having this conversation. Yeah, it's special and it's moving. I'm sorry, I can't put it into words, but I think you understand. I think you understand.
No, absolutely. And there's such an essence to those scenes as well. And I think that you do such a great job at capturing the delicacy of that relationship and what it really meant to him. And, you know, so congratulations on everything with the show so far. So excited that we've got more episodes still to come. Thank you so much, Uli.
Thank you. No problem.